was first. You wait, I was first. Excuse me.
Wow, you really got into it.
I don't take shit. No, correct.
Open with that?
Okay, come on.
Very much, yeah. What do you want here?
Address.
Just the representatives of the
She's pushy. She's very pushy.
as the people speak.
She is historically.
Okay.
Yeah, and Daryl's
sit right over here.
like, if there is
Yep.
one left,
Thank you.
he wants us up to figure out the
All right. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. I'm going to have the sign-in list over here to the left. Want to go through real quick just some introductions of the project team. And I see a number of state representatives, state senators. We've got some city council people, some county folks. I'd like you all to stand and just note your presence here tonight. And then I think we'll go through some of the key project team members. We're going to talk about Title VI reporting for this meeting, the purpose of the hearing, and the format of the hearing. Okay. First of all, some of the most important members of the project team are you folks. Your input is a critical part of this process. That's why we're here tonight, is to mostly hear from you. So I'm going to try to speak as little as possible tonight, and then leave the evening for you guys to have the mic. There was a citizen advisory committee in this project that provided a lot of early planning and guidance and put some side rails on the analysis for this project. The state and local regulatory agencies that were involved also helped guide some of the decision-making process within this project. We had the City of Missoula, Montana Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and my firm, HKM Engineering, out of Helena. Let's just real quick go through some of the representatives that we've got standing up here with various agencies. Gene Kaufman with the Federal Highway Administration, Dwayne Cayley with the Montana Department of Transportation, your division administrator, Steve King, your Public Works Director, Kevin Slovart, City Engineer, Greg Wood, Project Manager with this project, Susan Kilcrease with Montana Department of Transportation Environmental Section. At the sign-in table was Mickey Lloyd, and I think Jenny Merriam with the Mayor's office is wandering around over there. Tyler Schott is here with my office in the front, and Phil Odegaard is here. Have I missed anybody on the project team? Paul Grant is the Public Information Officer and is going to try to keep me from screeching on the speakers for the rest of the evening. Where's Shane? Shane's in the back here. Shane's staff with the Department of Transportation, also on the team. Any state legislators here this evening? I know there's a couple. If you'd like to stand and just note your presence here this evening. Senator Rosengren? Okay. County representatives? City council folks? Jason?
John Logan.
Ed Childers.
Glenn Calendar. Stacy Wright.
Great. Okay. Great. Thank you all very much for coming. Again, my name is Daryl James. I'm with HKM Engineering. I manage the process and was the primary author of the draft environmental impact statement that I'm sure you've all read cover to cover and are ready to discuss this evening. So, part of our requirements are to talk about Title VI. Just leave this up for you to read. We are doing this project in compliance with all the Americans with Disabilities and civil rights laws. There are informational brochures in the back of the room. I think are they purple or green, or it's a green colored brochure in the back. If you've got specific questions with regard to the anti-discrimination rules that we're working under with this project or with this meeting. Purpose of the hearing. We want to provide you with some factual, objective information as it's presented in the draft environmental impact statement tonight. But again, the primary purpose is to hear from you. We've done a lot of work up to this point, but it's time for you to provide some feedback on the work that we have done and the preliminary preferred alternative that's been identified. I'm going to give what I hope is about a 20 to 30 minute presentation to give you kind of an overview of the entire project. I'll go into just a brief clarification period. If you didn't understand something in my presentation, or if you've read something in the EIS that just didn't make sense to you and you've got a specific question about something that you read that you just want clarified, I'll take those kinds of questions just for clarification. But then we'll move into the formal hearing, and that's when we want to take your comments, or if you've got a broader question about the EIS process that you want a formal response to, I'd like you to hold those comments and questions until that period so that it's a part of the formal record, okay? And I'll explain that again as we move along. Real quickly, as you think about how long we've been talking about this project, I want to give you an overview of what it's taken to get here and why we're doing this. The Russell and South Third projects really started in the long-range transportation planning process. It started with the Missoula Transportation Plan update in, I believe, '96 was the first time that this project was really fleshed out as a high-priority project in the community. That goes into the environmental process. We started with a notice of intent to develop an environmental impact statement in 2000. We had scoping meetings, a number of public meetings over the past 7 years plus. I went through alternatives development and analysis, and then finally into a draft environmental impact statement. That's where we are right now. That document has been compiled. It's out for public review until October 20th. At that point, we'll assemble all the comments, move into a final environmental impact statement, and then, if all goes smoothly, move into a record of decision sometime, probably around this time next year. At that point, we would move into the project design. That's preliminary and final design, and then right-of-way acquisition. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about right-of-way and when that process happens and how that's done. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then project construction, and we're looking at a pretty substantial project, a very costly project. So this is something that would likely be phased over a number of years with different funding packages, okay? Very quick overview of the project development process. As I mentioned, this project started in 2000 with the notice of intent. There were a number of public meetings held, public informational meetings, public workshops. There was a walkable communities workshop held in the community. I'm sure a number of you participated in that. HCAM was brought on board in 2006. We had another kickoff meeting in October of '06 to kind of bring people back up to speed, let you know what we'd been working on, what still had to be done. We had a second public information meeting in April of this year to let you know that we'd had some changes in the preliminary preferred alternative, and I'll talk about what happened with that. And throughout this process, we've had e-newsletters, postcards, press releases, a lot of press coverage in the Missoulian. So hopefully you've all feel like you've been informed throughout this process, and this isn't something new to you. So where are we today? We've outlined 6 distinct alternatives on Russell Street and 5 on South 3rd, and in the draft environmental impact statement, we have identified preliminary preferred alternatives on both of those corridors. I do want to stress, though, that these are preliminary preferred alternatives. No decision has been made yet. We have to go through a final environmental impact statement to make sure that we've accounted for all the comments and concerns that are brought forward during this comment period. A decision is not made until we actually reach that record of decision, again, about a year from now. So your comments are still very much a part of this process. So what is this process I keep talking about? We got 3 major components. First of all is the purpose and need. What's the problem? What issue are we trying to address? Why are we going to the Federal Highway Administration and saying we need money to fix something? What is it? What's the actual problem we're trying to address? Then we look at alternatives. First of all, who's the responsible party to address the problem? Fed Highways, Department of Transportation, City of Missoula. These are generally the folks or representatives of the agencies that are responsible to fix transportation problems in the City of Missoula, okay? And then what can be done? What alternatives do we have? What tools do we have to be able to address the identified problem? Thirdly, what are the impacts? What are the impacts to adjacent residences, commercial property owners, and the daily users of the corridor, whether they're in a vehicle or on a bike or on foot? What are the impacts to each of those different parties? During the project development process, we have to develop, first and foremost, the need statement. What's the problem? The problem as it was identified is that the transportation facilities, again, that could be a vehicle lane, it could be a bicycle lane or a sidewalk, which are virtually non-existent in both the Russell and South 3rd corridors. They're not adequate to accommodate either existing or projected demand within these 2 corridors. Okay, so very simply stated, the purpose is to provide substantive safety and mobility improvements in Russell and South 3rd for all modes. Okay. If we did nothing in this corridor, or in either one of these corridors, in Russell and South 3rd, you can see the existing level of service. And there are a couple of boards over here that explain this in more detail. I'm not going to go into it during the presentation, but it's basically the experience of the traveler within the corridor. There are different levels of service for a vehicle versus a bike or a pedestrian, but generally this is referring to some of the, the levels of service experienced by vehicular travel within the corridor. You can see under existing conditions, during a peak hour, the level of service is in the D to F range. It means you're experiencing substantial delay, discomfort in driving, so it's just not a good situation. Under a no-build condition, in about 20 years, you'd have substantial delay at each intersection on both Russell and South 3rd. It's level of service F. It means it's completely broken down, it's gridlock, it's an ugly scene, okay? When we talk about improvements on Russell and South 3rd, it's important to look at what roles these streets play in your street network. Russell and South 3rd are both major arterials within the city. If you think of just your own circulatory system, these are the main arteries that carry blood to the neighborhoods and the other working parts of your community. So they're major arteries. But they're also running right through several neighborhoods. So we've got to balance kind of the needs to move people through with recognizing that there are people living and working right on these two arteries, okay? The Citizen Advisory Committee played a significant role early on with assisting with the development of some of the specific design elements that would go into this proposed project, okay? They said bike lanes are critically important in this process. We want those included. We want boulevard sidewalks. We don't like the sidewalks sitting right on the roadway, so let's have a boulevard or a barrier between, or a buffer, sorry, between a travel lane and a sidewalk. We talked a lot about trail access and making sure that we had access to the trails, and then the potential for grade separation. It means you don't have a crosswalk. You actually go either over or under Russell or South 3rd with a trail crossing, okay? Talked about boulevard and median landscaping to try to make this much more of a Stevens-like corridor than a reserve-like corridor. Just to, again, try to make this fit within the community a little bit more than just a swath of concrete and asphalt. And then concerns about the environmental management of stormwater, making sure that we dealt with all the runoff that would occur with a wider roadway. All of that input from the Citizen Advisory Committee was used to develop some of the goals and objectives. Again, we've got a purpose statement that says, why are we spending federal tax dollars on a roadway improvement? What's the problem we're trying to solve? But then we have goals and objectives that say, okay, we know what the problem is, we know what we need to do to fix it, but let's make this recognize some of the constraints and opportunities in the corridor. So it was first and foremost, improve safety and mobility, again, for all modes within the corridor. To improve multimodal access and mobility, again, that means make sure that the bikes and peds and transit can utilize this corridor as well as vehicles. We want to try to minimize the impacts as much as possible within this corridor. While still meeting purpose and need, let's minimize impacts. And then lastly, maintain community character. Again, just recognize that it's going through a couple of neighborhoods, and it does have a direct impact on several adjacent land uses. So how do we try to integrate these goals and objectives? There's a concept out called Complete Streets, and it's really something that's intended to take something like this. This is from the Complete Streets webpage, showing a 5-lane urban arterial. That looks pretty nasty. There's intermittent or non-continuous sidewalks, a little bit of grass there. It's probably cheap grass, but not a real friendly corridor. So Complete Streets says, let's put in some medians, let's put in continuous sidewalks, let's put in some landscaping. So the Walkable Communities Workshop that was held introduced a lot of these concepts, and the preliminary preferred alternative tries to introduce as much of this type of a concept as possible. And the advisory committee really led the whole project in this direction. So the Russell Street alternatives, again, there are 5 build alternatives and 1 no-build alternative. What that means, under the National Environmental Policy Act process, we have to carry a no-build condition saying, if we did nothing in this corridor, what would happen? What would it look like? What are the consequences? So we always carry a no-build, and then we looked at 5 build alternatives. I'm going to throw these up very quickly, and the boards, again, are off to the side. What you're going to see on these next few slides, you've got an aerial picture here with an overlay of just a schematic. This is not to scale by any means. The roadway is not going to be 4 blocks wide here. But it just illustrates in cross-section in relation to the portion of the roadway here where you've got 2 lanes with a center turn median. You got a 4-lane section here between South 3rd and South 5th. And then south of South 5th, it's basically just a 2-lane section with no curb, gutter, sidewalk, anything, okay? So that's just to illustrate what we're going to be looking at. Alternative 2 is predominantly a two-lane roadway until you get to Wyoming. It goes up to 4 lanes. Through most of the corridor, you've got a center turn lane or a median, but it's generally a 2 to 3 lane facility. Alternative 3 is virtually a 3 to a 4 lane facility, excuse me, or 2 lane with a center turn lane or median, and then 4 lanes north of Wyoming Street. And, whoops. Alternative 2, I should point out, does have double lane roundabouts. Alternative 3 also has double lane roundabouts. Alternative 4 is a 4 lane roadway, 2 lanes in each direction with a center turn lane or a median. Thanks, Paul. And signalized intersection at your major intersections at Broadway, Wyoming, South 3rd, South 5th, and at Mount. Okay? Alternative 5 is the same configuration, 2 lanes in each direction, center turn lane with a median, and double lane roundabouts at those major intersections, with the exception of Broadway, which would remain a signalized intersection. All of these, again, these are kind of difficult to see. These are in the environmental impact statement. They're also in this summary document. We've got a number of these up front. If you want to grab one of these before you leave, or if you are burning to look through one of these, you're more than welcome to come up and grab one, or I can have, maybe Greg can hand some of these out. If somebody really wants a summary, stick your hand up in the air and we'll get one of these to you. But this outlines some of just the basic improvements that would be included in any of the improvement options. Looking at some intersection redesigns to improve traffic flow and safety. We've got intersection redesign at South 8th. Kernan Harlem would be redesigned. We've got a right-in, right-out at River Road. And the Lawrence and Longstaff streets would be restricted to right-in, right-out, just to, again, improve traffic flow. There would also be a new River Road connection. Because of the right-in, right-out restriction here at River Road, traffic would be directed all the way over here to Wyoming Street. So we do some local improvements on a number of surface streets just to redirect traffic over to Wyoming. Okay, and that's generally just because of the proximity to the bridge end and making sure that we don't have people trying to make a left turn there. It's not a safe maneuver with the projected traffic volumes. So in this National Environmental Policy Act, Montana Environmental Policy Act process, we have to go through kind of a screening process to say, first of all, we've got this purpose and need statement. Any alternative that's carried forward for detailed analysis has to first satisfy that purpose and need. Does it provide substantive safety and mobility improvements for all modes of traffic? That's our first question, okay? When we look at that, we looked at alternatives 2 and 3. Again, these are the 2-lane roadway sections. They just don't provide enough capacity to accommodate the existing or projected traffic volumes within the Russell Street corridor, okay? So those 2 alternatives fall out of the mix. They don't provide enough capacity. They don't improve mobility for vehicles. So it doesn't provide it for all modes, and they're out. We heard a number of comments during our April meeting. We've heard them since then that, gosh, we really want you to take another look at this. Are you considering everything that needs to be considered? We did analysis on a number of different intersection modifications, intersection designs, roundabout designs. We used several different tools to say, okay, can we look at this differently? How do we see if we've really looked at this deeply enough? And I think there were 3 or 4 different modeling tools and technical tools that we looked at and said, okay, the single lane and even 2-lane roundabouts on a 2-lane system do not provide enough capacity to meet projected travel demand. So alternatives 2 and 3 have been eliminated. Again, this is a fairly detailed chart of level of service that just shows you that with the projected traffic volumes, you've got E and F level of service at several intersections with those 2- and 3-lane options. When we go through the environmental process, there are a number of areas of environmental concern that we have to look at. Everything from land use and wetlands and social impacts, economic impacts, air quality, water quality. Most of those impacts are virtually the same with any of the build alternatives. The major differences come from these 5 different categories: residential impacts, impacts to commercial properties, Section 4F, and we're going to talk about that in a second, total right-of-way, and ultimately the cost of the project. So those are what we're going to focus on tonight. If you want full details on all of the impact categories, they're in the draft environmental impact statement. Some of those are outlined in the summary, but we're going to focus on these issues tonight. Impacts on Russell Street. We moved forward with alternatives 4 and 5. Those are the 5-lane options. One has signals, one has roundabouts. There were 21 acquisitions. That's both commercial and residential. 21 impacts with alternative 4. That's the 4-lane with signals. There were 29 on alternative 5. That's the 4-lane with roundabouts. Okay. Section 4F properties, we had 3 on alternative 4 and 6 on alternative 5. Okay. Estimated cost, almost $40 million for alternative 4 and about almost $45 million for alternative 5. Okay. So this is just to give you an order of magnitude comparison of these two alternatives. So what the heck is Section 4F? Section 4F is a piece of the Transportation Act, U.S. Transportation Act, that extends special protection to certain properties. It's to public parks, recreational areas, and historic areas. Okay. What it says is that no federally funded project can impact these particular parcels unless there's no alternative to their use. Okay. So if you can avoid it, you have to choose an alternative that avoids use of those particular types of properties. In this corridor, we had several historic homes, historic residences that are protected by Section 4F. Okay. These are located, the most critical areas were at South 5th. We're looking north is to the right. With alternative 4 in a signalized intersection, there are 2 historic properties, both on the west side of the road. One is in the northwest quadrant, one is in the southwest quadrant. Both of those properties, as you can see with the roundabout, are deeply impacted by the construction limits. The actual structures are impacted with the roundabout option. With a signalized intersection, you have a very minor impact to the one in the northwest quadrant of the intersection, but you can virtually avoid the one in the southwest quadrant. The city was very interested in pursuing roundabouts, so we spent quite a bit of time looking at, okay, what can we do to modify this alternative 5, avoid impacts to that 4F resource, but still choose the roundabout option. So we shifted the alignment, we shrunk the roundabout, we put some wiggles and curves in it. We took out the roundabout at Wyoming Street, took out the roundabout at Mount, really trying to squeeze this down as much as possible. Again, keeping in mind that one of the goals and objectives was to minimize impacts. And we came up with another alternative. You can see the roundabout is shifted up to the northeast in this particular option, alternative 5 refined, and we still have an impact on the 4F resource. Substantially less than alternative 5. 5 refined did minimize that impact, but when we took that back to the State Historic Preservation Office, who makes the ultimate call on whether this is considered an adverse impact, they said, no, this is still an adverse impact. It's too close to the structure. You missed the structure, but it's within a couple of feet, and it does deteriorate the integrity of that property, so we're considering it an impact. So the Federal Highway Administration has to say, okay, we agree, and we have a lesser damaging alternative. We have a signal there that has virtually no impact, so we have to select that alternative. Okay? So when we look at this in more detail, alternative 4 would impact 11 homes. Alternative 5 with roundabouts would impact 18. The alternative 5 refined would take that down to 12. So on homes, alternative 4 and alternative 5 refined are pretty darn close. They're very similar, not much of a difference. Commercial buildings, 10 with alternative 4, 13 with alternative 5 with roundabouts. Alternative 5 refined has 10 homes. Again, exactly what would happen with alternative 4. We get down to the Section 4F properties. There are 3 impacts on alternative 4, 6 with alternative 5. Again, the intent with alternative 5 refined was to minimize impacts to those Section 4F properties. Did a good job in achieving that, but it still has more than alternative 4. I put an asterisk here with this 3. There are 2 full acquisitions, so there's no way we can avoid impacts to 2 of those properties. The third one is that one at South 5th, and we're taking literally about 2 feet of the property. State Historic Preservation Office said, okay, it's still an impact, but if Federal Highways will sign off on this, we'll let you go through with what they call a de minimis impact or a minimal impact, and you're good to go. Acres of right-of-way, 4.3 acres with alternative 4, 5.4 acres roughly with alternative 5, and 4.1 with alternative 5 refined. Cost estimates are here as well, nearly $40 million for alternative 4, 45 million for alternative 5, and almost $40 million for alternative 5 refined. I put this up here just for, again, magnitude of impact comparison, the 4F issue really does kind of drive the decision here to say you can't do a roundabout at South 5th because of those Section 4F impacts. South 3rd is too close to have a signal at South 5th and a roundabout at South 3rd, so it kicks out the opportunity to have a roundabout at South 3rd. So you're really into making a decision to say, okay, roundabouts at this point, with the information that we have, can't go forward. You're going to have to choose an alternative with signalized intersections. So knowing that alternative 4 satisfies the purpose and need to improve safety and mobility within the corridor, and it has less 4F impacts, less overall impact, alternative 4 has been identified as the preliminary preferred alternative on Russell Street. Specific design elements, again, you can look at these in detail in the graphics over here on our right, your left. A new Russell Street bridge with trail connections on top of the bridge and underneath the bridge. Bless you. It does have 4 travel lanes with a raised median or landscaped median and turn lanes. 5.5-foot bicycle lanes that's measured from the face of curb. So you've got a little bit of gutter pan there, and then 4.5 feet of asphalt that's dedicated to a bike lane. 5-foot sidewalks, landscape boulevards, and 4 trail undercrossings. Again, this is a grade separated crossing where the trail actually crosses underneath Russell Street. This is just a graphic illustration. Ed Jenny here in your community developed a couple of graphics for us, and they're over here on the right if you want to take a look at those. South 3rd, again, we carry forward a no-build alternative. What happens if we do nothing? And then we have 4 build alternatives. The no-build, everybody knows it's a 2-lane facility, no sidewalks, no bike lanes, virtually no shoulders. Alternative B, install single-lane roundabouts at Schilling Curtis, Johnson, and Catlin Streets. There's a kind of a cloud over here on Russell Street. As we went through this process, we had to consider that Russell Street would dominate the design. So whatever happened at Russell and South 3rd is what would be incorporated into the alternative on South 3rd. I should also note that because of funding availability and timing of construction on South 3rd, this would likely be some ways out and would likely proceed as a city project. It would not be a state or a federal highway project, but depending on funding sources and availability, that could change. But at this point, it's anticipated to be a number of years out and would proceed as a city project. Alternative C has 2 lanes with a median center turn lane, single lane roundabouts, again, at Schilling Curtis, Johnson, and Catlin Streets. The existing signal at Reserve would remain, and you'd have a signal at Russell Street because of the preferred alternative on Russell Street. Alternative D, because of some heavy traffic volumes and intersection turn movements, this alternative was developed to say that you'd have 2 travel lanes heading westbound, 1 travel lane heading eastbound, and would have a center turn lane or median throughout with signalized intersections at Reserve, Schilling Curtis, Johnson, and Catlin Streets. Alternative E is basically the same as C, 1 lane in each direction, center turn lane, raised median, but with signals at all of the major intersections rather than the single lane roundabouts. As we looked at impacts with these 4 build alternatives on South 3rd, again, 2 to 3 homes with each of the alternatives, 1 to 2 commercial buildings, right-of-way acquisition pretty similar, between 2.4 and 3.6 acres of right-of-way. Estimated costs between 11.2 and roughly $13 million. Based on the desire of the community to see single lane options with medians, landscaping, and roundabouts, Alternative C does meet purpose and need, does reflect a lot of the goals and objectives that were outlined early in this process. Alternative C has been identified as the preliminary preferred alternative on South 3rd Street. So what are our next steps? Again, we've got a public comment period on the draft environmental impact statement that's open until October 20th. We'll take comments this evening. You can mail in comments. You can send them in on the web. There's a number of opportunities, and there's a card over here if you didn't get one on your way in on how you can leave comments. We'll be responding to this project team. And if you're bored with me, or if you don't have time to sit through the rest of the hearing tonight, we do have a stenographer in the corner over here, all the way in the back corner. If you don't want to leave a written comment, if you aren't web savvy, if you don't have time to sit down and do this, feel free to run over to her, and she will take any verbal comments that you have. Those will be incorporated into the project record and be responded to as much as anything that's written or emailed or spoken here tonight. So please take advantage of that opportunity as well. Every comment that we receive, either this evening or by any other mode, up until October 20th, will be recorded and responded to by the project team. That will be presented in the final environmental impact statement, and that'll be part of the official project record. Based on the comments that we receive, we will evaluate the need for any kind of further analysis. If we just flat missed something, or if there's been a new development in the quarter that we need to be aware of and incorporate into the final environmental impact statement, we'll look at those changed conditions or needs and make sure that those are addressed. We'll prepare the final environmental impact statement. Again, we're anticipating that would happen sometime between now and spring, and then move forward to a record of decision or a request to Federal Highways, who's apparently vacated us, sometime hopefully around the summer of next year. Again, just to hammer this home, you can either leave written comments with us tonight, you can mail or email your comments in, you can go to the HKM Inc. Webpage. The draft environmental impact statement is available online at this web address. Don't feel like you have to write that down. It's on a postcard over here at the sign-in sheet or sign-in table. And the public review and comment period is open until October 20th. So you've still got time, but I urge you not to wait until the last minute. Again, on that little postcard, if you didn't grab one on the way in, the draft EIS is available online. It's at the Missoula Public Library. It's at the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Library at U of M. It's at the City of Missoula's Public Works Office, the Montana Department of Transportation District Office out on Broadway. It's at the MDT office in Helena. And we have a couple of CDs here tonight. Again, if you can't get it offline, if you want a CD, we've got that. We do also have these summary documents if you don't feel like wading through the whole document. This gives you a pretty good overview. So you have those different avenues to review the document. At this point, again, I want to take any questions or clarifications on something that I said in the presentation that just went through too fast and you missed it, or if there's a point in the draft environmental impact statement that you just didn't get, you need some clarification. I'll make clarifications at this point, but if you've got, I got you. If you've got a question or a comment on the EIS or on the preliminary preferred alternative, I want to urge you to wait until the hearing portion so that we get that comment recorded and we can provide a formal response to that, okay? Is everybody clear kind of on our intent? Okay? Back here. No, we did not look at a roundabout at 6th, no. Okay? Here.
My question is about the life and the beginning and the end of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Could you please tell me exactly when it was formed, exactly when it ceased to exist, and how it ceased to exist?
I'll do this from my understanding. I wasn't involved in the early part of the process. We were brought on about 2 years ago. My understanding was that the Citizen Advisory Committee was formed shortly after the project started in 2000. The project kind of stalled out in 2005, roughly, with some of the 4F issues and design issues. I think the Citizen Advisory Committee basically ceased meeting at that point. When we were brought on board, we reviewed the project, met with the city, MDT, Fed Highway staff, and at that point, it was determined that the Citizen Advisory Committee had served its purpose in outlining purpose and need, goals and objectives, again, kind of putting the side rails on what's the project about, what are we hoping to get out of this project. So the Citizen Advisory Committee really served its purpose in setting up what the project was about. When we It's in 2006, there was a letter sent out.
2001, I believe the answer is, sir.
Okay, 2000 to 2002 was when the committee was actively meeting. I believe there was a letter sent out in 2006 that said, thank you for your participation. We've got what we need from the advisory committee. From 2002 on, and particularly when we came on in 2006, that input, while valuable, had kind of served its purpose. At that point, we were into technical analysis of the alternatives. And the Citizen Advisory Committee would not have been requested to review level of service, highway capacity, manual output, or anything like that. It just, that wasn't the intent of the advisory committee.
So the Citizens Advisory Committee knew what its longevity was, or did it learn of the end of its longevity suddenly? That's my question.
I can't answer that question. I know with a standard project, it's not a decision-making body, it's an advisory committee. It's set up for a certain purpose, and for this project, it had served its purpose. Thank you. Nancy?
I noticed that traffic projections seem to continually be brought up as we're reviewing all these designs. Can you tell me when those traffic projections were developed and what gas prices were in that time period?
Can I just say no and move on? Okay. Nancy's asking when the traffic projections were developed and do they accurately reflect changed conditions since this project started in 2000? The traffic projections used for any type of a project like this generally come out of your long-range transportation planning process, the model that's developed for the city. That provides the baseline. There have certainly been some changes in growth patterns, and VMT nationwide has changed. We can take a look at that, and we have taken a look at that and said, if we've had a substantial change, would it really change the need for the project? We can look at it today and say, alternatives 2 and 3 wouldn't work today. We'd have to still see a downward trend in vehicle use in Missoula to say a single lane option with roundabouts, single lane roundabouts would work. So there has been a change, we acknowledge that, but it's not been enough to say, to change the results of the analysis. Having said that, the draft environmental impact statement says in there, we know that we've got enough money to start a project, to do the bridge reconstruction and go as far south as maybe to South 3rd. That next piece from South 3rd to Mount is probably another 5-10 years down the road. We put in the draft environmental impact statement that we would review traffic projections, the assumptions that were in place when this document was put together, and review those against actual on-the-ground conditions. Have physical conditions changed in the corridor? Have traffic patterns, travel behaviors changed? Has vehicle use changed? Has there been a huge mode shift in the community that would cause us to go, wow, we don't need 5 lanes now south of South 3rd? So there is the opportunity, again, whenever that project or that phase of the project moves forward, to back up and go, are we still operating under accurate assumptions? So that's in there, and realistically, that would be part of any project that is protracted over a number of years, but we've specifically stated that in the draft environmental impact statement because of some of the concerns raised through the public involvement process and because of the recognition that we got a long way between now and ultimate construction of both Russell and South 3rd Streets. Okay? You're in here. Go ahead, Jordan. Well, then it's already been asked, Jordan. Next. I'm just kidding.
Suppose we were to reach a point continuing down the road where the second phase of the project was coming on, and we determined that five wasn't needed. Would that then go through the design process and look at other alternatives for that section of the corridor, or would it revert to a no build?
No, what would likely happen is you would go into a supplemental environmental impact statement. So it would reopen the process and say, okay, now what makes sense? But it would have to be some pretty substantial changes in either on-the-ground conditions or the assumptions that were at play when this started. Up here in front.
2 questions. I wonder if you know what criteria was used by the state historic office to determine what made those 4 properties. And secondly, we move a lot of houses in Missoula. I see moving all over. Why not relocate them?
Good question. The question was about the 4F properties. What makes those significant? Why do they have to be protected? There are 4 criteria. I'm going to try to make this quick. There are 4 criteria that make a structure or a site historically eligible. 1, it has to be at least 50 years of age. It has to retain structural or architectural integrity. It can have some local significance in history. Somebody locally famous or nationally famous lived there, worked there, ate there. And there's a 4th one, and it always escapes me, and I can't remember what it is. But for like a historic event, thank you, Steve. Washington lost his false teeth there. You know, what, exactly. So in this case, they are structures that are over 50 years old and retain architectural integrity. Okay, that's the only reason those half a dozen structures are historically eligible. That's not a determination from any of these folks. The State Historic Preservation Office makes that determination, and it's coordinated by the Montana Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration, but it's outside their jurisdiction to make the call on whether those are protected or not.
So what about relocating?
If when you consider the integrity of a structure, it's at that location. If you move it, it's lost its integrity. So that's why you can't relocate a historic structure and have it still be eligible for the National Register.
So that's part of the rule of 4F in the State Historic Preservation Officer?
I'll say in most cases, it depends on the site. You know, if it's a farmstead.
Well, they weren't. I mean, you showed
Right.
the picture. So
Exactly.
These are small houses.
For these, it's a small lot, it's been like that, exactly. So relocating them is really not an option in these particular cases. In others, it could be, but not in this case. Okay?
Scoping and with the tenants for public participation, I think you're 40 CFR or something like that.
The scoping meetings, the question was whether we have complied with the federal requirements for public involvement, basically. The scoping meetings were held back in 2000. There have been multiple public meetings. There were 12 advisory committee meetings held throughout this process. I would say the long and short is we have far exceeded the federal requirements for public participation in this process. So emphatically, yes, all of the public involvement requirements have been met.
Beyond living meetings.
Yes, and again, there have been a number of different avenues, whether it's been public presentations, public workshops, citizen advisory committee meetings, newsletters, media coverage. So we've over and above the requirements. Any other? Okay, I'm going to try to keep this to clarifications, and then we'll move into comments.
When you were talking about Third Street options, it looked like C, D, and E were viable options. You said C was chosen, but you didn't really elaborate on why D and E were chosen.
D and E, I think D is a larger footprint, has 2 lanes in one direction, one in the other. So the added capacity really didn't get you that much more. We're trying to minimize impacts again as much as possible, but still maintain a particular level of service. E, and I'm going to screw this up, I think is the signalized intersections. There was a strong desire to use roundabouts, so that's why C was chosen. But the city and public input, there's been a strong desire expressed through this process to use roundabouts wherever possible. Go back here and then over here.
Do property owners have they have to say in resolving their section 4F status?
Not really. I won't tell you how you could, but no. The real answer is no. You don't really have a say in whether your house is protected by Section 4F. You don't have to be on the register, the National Register for Historic Places, but it really is a call by the State Historic Preservation Office on whether that's eligible or not. So, yeah, it really doesn't matter. It's over here.
Why is it federal and Montana Department of Transportation involved?
I'm sorry?
Why is the Montana Department of Transportation involved in federal highways?
The question is, why are federal highways and the Montana Department of Transportation involved in this project? Because the city of Missoula is approaching them for $40 million to construct the project. So it's their money. We have to abide by their process.
Is there connection of 93 and West Broadway? Does that become an issue?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is there?
Does it become a Montana highway?
Oh, no. It doesn't change the designation or the purpose or anything else. It's just the funding authority, the funds that are being used. But it doesn't change the designation or make it a state highway or, no. There's another hand over in here. Back.
How do you assess the safety issues of the roundabout versus the intersections? Is that it's there to make a difference? How do you consider that? How do you assess the technology? And how do you chose the
That's a that's a very detailed question. I'm going to ask you to hold that for the comment period so that we can provide a detailed response to that, because it's not something I want to just spit out a quick response to, because it's an important question. Okay? Can I ask you to do that? Okay. Any other clarifications?
Would it be possible to build roundabout at 6th Street? Is there actually an interval to have one at 6th and one at 3rd?
When you look at traffic control, you have to meet warrants for either a signal or a roundabout, and there's not enough side street traffic at South 6th to warrant either a signal or a roundabout. Okay. Any other clarifications on the presentation or the EIS, Bob?
You did detailed analysis of the capacity and time delay, but I think this is what Ben was asking. Is there anywhere in the CIS a safety analysis of the different alternatives?
We did not conduct a detailed safety analysis. When you look at a comparison of roundabouts versus signalized intersections, national data is going to tell you that while you might have a slight increase in accidents with roundabouts, with initial implementation, they're lower speed, side swipe type accidents. They're not as severe. Long term, I think the data is varied, but that's about as far as we've gone with that analysis. We did not do a detailed safety analysis, but with improved traffic flow, you generally see a reduction in accidents, because most of the crashes within the corridor are related to congestion at the intersections. They're rear end accidents, they're turning movement accidents at the intersections during congested peak hours. So those are the assumptions we're working under. I'm going to take just a couple more, and then I'd like to move into the. Yep. I'm sorry.
They relate the slide that you put.
Good.
One of them was, I think, the what report card. Who assigned those grades? What criteria did they use to assign the grades?
That's a great question.
And the second question is, you talk about an alternative being a preferred alternative. Who preferred it and under what criteria?
How do we develop a preferred alternative, and what the heck is a level of service? The level of service, I'm going to point you to the boards over here and ask you to do a detailed discussion, but it's basically developed by, it's a highway capacity manual, it's a nationally used criteria. Again, it's an expression of driver experience. It's nothing more than just a gradation to say, what is the experience of the driver in the corridor? A being free flow traffic, no delay. F being it's gridlock. You're sitting there delayed at an intersection. And there's not a hard line in there that says you got to do something above or below this line. The preliminary preferred alternative was developed through this process, saying, what problem are we trying to solve? Can we solve it? And then with the other goals and objectives, how do we try to minimize impacts, maintain community character? So it's an evolutionary process developed through the criteria that were developed by this group and the professionals that are ultimately responsible for implementation and monitoring and maintaining a safe and accessible roadway. Okay. All right. Let's move forward to the formal hearing portion of this evening. Thank you all very much for coming. If you want to leave a comment, please do. Let me stress this again. If I do have a sign-in sheet here, I'm going to go through this list first, and then we'll open it up if anybody else wants to speak after this. We've got 20 people signed up. It is about 7:30. I'd like to limit comments to about 2 or 3 minutes so that we make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to speak tonight. People are already drifting out because they got better things to do. Please take advantage of the court reporter if you don't have time to wait. Leave a comment on the web. Fill out your comment sheet before you leave. But please do leave your comments in some fashion. So we'll move through this list. And I'll again say that we're not going to respond to any of your comments or questions now. What we'll do is record those. They'll be transcribed, put in the final environmental impact statement, and this project team will develop a very detailed response to any of your questions or comments. Okay? So everybody understand the general ground rules? Okay? Yes, sir.
Say anything you want. Do anything you want.
Question, can you suggest a change in the design at an intersection? Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, anything is game. Any questions, comments that you want to make are fair game at this point, and we will develop a response to those. We won't respond to them tonight. The only time that I might interject or add anything is if we need a factual clarification on information in the EIS. I might just pull out the EIS and help clarify a point. But the intent, again, is to hear from you. This is your opportunity to be at the mic and and give us your input. Okay? So let's move into the formal hearing process. We're going to start with Tom Facey. Is Tom still here? Okay. Lost my pen. Okay. How about Marta Mings? And then Scott Boma. We can have Marta over here and then Scott on this side.
Hey, I would just like to state the following brief 7 facts, and they're brief.
Marta, can I get you? I'm sorry. Can you make sure you don't
Sure.
eat that microphone so we've got you on there? Thank you.
Following brief facts for your consideration. 10 businesses and 11 houses would be removed to accommodate this new road. This would have quite a personal impact on the owners of these businesses and homes, and also the houses next to them. 4 to 5 lanes would divide the neighborhood from 3rd to 14th Street, create a road with the width and traffic volume of Reserve Street, bring faster traffic and increase noise to the neighborhood. Number 3, the ability to speed through this neighborhood with the construction of 4 to 5 motorized travel lanes would create what is called induced traffic. Induced traffic is the increased attraction of vehicles to a road because it is perceived as a fast thoroughfare. Number 4, 2 travel lanes going in the same direction, or a total of 4 travel lanes, greatly increases the chance of pedestrian cyclist injury when crossing the road. Even with a boulevard in the middle, the second lane of traffic going the same way must still be crossed, and often even though the car in the first lane stops, the car in the second lane does not and keeps driving, increasing the danger of hitting the pedestrian or cyclist. Traffic projections are based on outdated perspectives, not taking into account increased gas prices, the decreased driving time of drivers, the increased use of mass transit, and increased non-motorized travel choices being made by the citizens. Number 6, a signalized intersection as compared to roundabouts creates way more pedestrian cyclist injuries, as there are many more points of conflicts in a signalized intersection. And finally, we know that more people bike and walk if they feel safer and more comfortable on the roads they travel and cross. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Okay, we're already lied. I'm going to do 2 things. I want to set up some ground rules. Let's please not do the applause or boos or anything like that. We just want to take everybody's comments without the passionate please. The other thing I want to do is there were some concerns about who the decision makers were in this process, and I want to point out that the director of the Department of Transportation, Jim Lynch, is here with us tonight. So you've got adequate representation from the city, MDT, Federal Highways, but I just wanted to note that Jim Lynch is here, and I'm sure would be willing to speak with anybody after the meeting. And Mayor Ingen is here as well. I didn't see him, but he is here as well. Okay. Scott Boma, and then Jeremy Keene is on deck on the right side here, or left side.
Daryl, I was hoping for applause.
Sorry, Scott.
You're going to hear the for and against, I think, right here. I'd like to thank all these guys and for all the time that they've taken, the public and Daryl and his crew and all the city and state and federal officials. I own one of the houses that's probably going to be taken by this project, so I think I'm somewhat qualified to have an opinion about it, and I'm fully in support of what they're suggesting here. Living right next to Russell myself, I know that the traffic there is unhealthy. I've got little kids that play out in the yard right by Russell, and I mean, half the time in the morning and the evening, there's traffic just stopped right there by my house, and you know, it stinks, and it's there's always traffic going by, so traffic is definitely a problem. Anything we can do to get the traffic moving more quickly and maybe in waves so that it's a more manageable roadway would be good, I think. The city is growing, and you know, I own a house on that street, but I think it's a little bit selfish for the people in the neighborhood to say we're going to keep our neighborhood at the expense of the wider street. Like Daryl showed, I mean, this is a major artery, and living next to it, I know it is, and I think it's fair to let the rest of the city have a say in you know, how the city grows. And also a third point is it's not in good repair right now. I own the garage that you can reach out and slap as you drive by when you're going north. And like Daryl said, there's no sidewalks there, no gutters or anything. People are walking past right on the side of the road. So there are definitely safety issues there, and this is a good opportunity to clean it up. I appreciate some of the things that the previous lady said. The idea that making it a 5-lane road would make it unsafe, I think works on the assumption that it's safe right now, and it's not. The idea that you're going to divide the community, I think is, I mean, the fact is it's divided now already. Anybody who's tried to cross Russell, or especially in my area around 9th Street, knows that you have to sit there and wait for a while just to cross, and if you've got a couple kids, it's even worse. So the idea of having a couple dedicated crosswalks will, I think, make it better, not worse.
Scott, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds here.
Okay, that'll do it then.
Okay.
Yeah, so in conclusion, I support them. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Scott. Jeremy Keene, and then we got Stephen Shambell. Please, no applause either side. Thank you. Stephen Shambell on the other side here. Jeremy?
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Keene. I'm with WGM Group, and I'm a principal with that company, and I'm the head of our transportation group. And my involvement with this project goes back over 10 years, beginning with the South 3rd Street project, which eventually was rolled into this EIS process, and then continuing on as a member of the public and following closely the events and how it transpired. I'm here to speak in favor of the project and generally in favor of the preferred alternative. I think this is an important project for economic development and redevelopment of the Russell Street area. It's consistent with the goals and objectives of the transportation plan and the Envision Missoula process that we're going through, which really focuses on infill in the urban area and growth inward in the community. That's Russell Street. That's where we are. And if we want to create great urban places and great neighborhoods in our community without continuing the sprawl pattern, we have to provide infrastructure to support it. And we have to be able to get there by multiple modes of transportation. That's walking, that's biking, it's transit, and it's cars. So this project needs to, I believe, provide adequate capacity for the immediate future. We're watching traffic volumes very carefully. We saw the decrease in volumes with the increase in gas prices, but I think it would be a mistake to assume that's a trend. We need to see what happens over the next few years to get a little bit more data to know really what's going to happen. But given the redevelopment potential of this area, I think it would be mistaken to assume that traffic isn't going to at least be what it is today and probably more in the future. Even with a healthy mode split of good urban development, mixed-use development that would promote biking and walking and other modes of transportation, we're still going to have car traffic.
About 30 seconds here, Jeremy.
So at the same time, I think it's important that we design a road that's compatible with the community. So just a few specific comments on the preferred alternative. The first being that I think I would like you to consider a level of service target of D other than C, because you're targeting a fairly high level of service for the peak hour that really dictates the shape of the road. And I think level service D is an accepted criteria in many urban places and would be a reasonable level of service to shoot for. It has a major effect on how you design the intersections, particularly left turn lanes, the need for right turn lanes, double left turn lanes, that sort of thing. And I would also suggest you consider narrower lane widths, which would reduce crossing distances for pedestrians and also promote lower speeds. I would request that you consider frequent median refuge crossings similar to Stevens, where in addition to the grade separated crossings, pedestrians have opportunities to get across half the street at a time.
Okay, Jeremy, I'm going to have to yank up the stage here.
I'll finish. Lastly, focus on good design, not the number of lanes. That's really critical.
Okay, thanks. Stephen Shambell, not still here. Ryan Newhouse and Bob Wachtel. Ryan Newhouse still here. Bob? Okay. Ryan is gone? Okay. How about Mike Greathouse after Bob?
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Bike Walk Alliance for Missoula. Our membership is in a neighborhood of 150. After much discussion in our board meetings and our various project groups, we find that the preferred alternative at this point is unsatisfactory in maintaining the community nature of the Russell area. We would like to propose that the 3+ alternative be examined in more detail and possibly adopted.
Thank you, Bob. Mike Greathouse, and then Christy Du Bois. Christy still here?
What's disturbing to me is the amount of traffic that's on Johnson, Catlin, and Garfield, and the people that race through the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood. So I support what they're doing here and hoping that it'll alleviate the amount of traffic that races through our neighborhoods.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Christy? And then Dave Durnford. Dave still here?
I'm Christy Du Bois. I'm here representing myself. And I bicycle around Missoula and I drive around Missoula. I probably drive a lot more than I bicycle, and would do it the other way around if I had some safer, better ways to get around. I'm opposed to the preferred alternative. I would like to see the citizens developed 3+ alternative evaluated to see if that could be a better way to do this. I drive Reserve Street every day to go to work. They widened Reserve Street from 2 lanes into 4, and look what happened. It was backed up when it was 2 lanes. It's backed up when it's 4 lanes. You just have 4 lanes backed up instead of 2 lanes. If you build it, they'll come. And if you build it for cars, cars will come. If you build it better for bicycles and pedestrians, you'll get a few more people out of their cars, saving the streets for the people that have to drive, and making for a healthier community. I hate to see people's homes impacted any more than necessary. That's supposed to be a residential neighborhood. And I'm appalled by the fact that traffic load seems to be the one most important factor in redesigning the roads. And I feel like we should design things for people, not for cars. And I think that the traffic projections may change quite a bit now as people are looking at the cost of gas. I would like to see Missoula look to the future and build things for the future, use innovative ways to get people around town instead of using the same old ways of the past. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christy. Dave Durnford and John Snively on deck on the other side here. John, still
my
here?
name's Dave Durnford. I actually grew up around 7th and Russell, and so I still have my mom's house there. We're not just building transportation. It bothers me this whole time that we're just building transportation. We're not addressing character of residential area at all. Even this, your preferred alternative doesn't do that. Functionally, I like the 3+ idea. However, functionally, I don't think it's going to address future traffic. And we're always going to have traffic, whether we're driving an ethanol-driven car or whether we're driving an air-driven car, those new ones that are propelled by air. So we're always going to have that. This preferred alternative to me, a residential area is at least 60% undeveloped land. It doesn't have hardscape on it, which would be sidewalks, and et cetera, et cetera. This preferred alternative is nothing but pretty much hardscape. I'd be scared to death to ride my bike on it with a little 5-foot lane. That's really, especially at the speed that people are going to presume that they can travel on a 24-foot wide lanes going one way and a bike lane. And then you've got the curb and a very tiny 5-foot tree lane. I don't think that's enough separation or buffer for any of these homes that are, you want to call them historic. They're not going to be historic for long. They're going to be commercial. All we have to do is look at South Avenue and see what's happened to almost every small house there. And that eventually erodes back into the rest of the neighborhood. I'm going to take a devil's advocate just for a moment, though.
I'll give you about 30
and
seconds
that's
here.
possibly approaching if they took both sides of Russell and actually made a really decent statement about the quality of life in Missoula. That would be a very large median, extremely large buffers on the side. I mean, that is something I don't hear really addressed, is the identity of Russell rather than just a rubber stamp of Stevens Avenue put on Russell.
Thank you, Dave. Got John Snively and then Gene Clark on the other side. Is Gene still here? And 1 second. Gene still here? Bob Giordano. Gene? Okay, sorry.
My name is John
Go ahead, John.
Snively. I live in the university area and have a business on South Higgins Avenue. And I can relate very easily to the concerns of the neighborhood toward having a larger roadway constructed in this area. I'm, for that reason, going to speak against it. I also have a concern that while we're putting a diet on Broadway and reducing the capacity of that major thoroughfare through town, that we are talking about increasing dramatically the capacity of the Russell Street thoroughfare. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Gene Clark and then Bob Giordano.
My name is Jean Clark. I live on Cedar Street, just a block east of Russell and a block south of Broadway. So I cross both of them every day. I drive to work half the time and I ride my bike half the time. Quite frankly, it's frightening crossing 4 lanes of traffic on your bike. By the time you get across that second lane driver often doesn't see me. And this is the reality that I see when I'm out there. Now, I know he's talking about 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. That's not what they're driving. When I drive on my route to work, I stick to the speed limit, 35, then 45, and I am the slowest driver out there. So by putting 4 lanes on Russell, I feel like you're setting the rules at 30, but that's not what drivers are going to drive. So my route to the good food store, forget it. I'm worried about riding my bike across 4 lanes of traffic. I used to live on Reserve Street, and I never, ever patronized any of the stores out there, only because of the crossing back and forth across the traffic. Now where I live, I shop locally, but if those lanes start increasing, my shopping locally, my community involvement is going to majorly decrease.
About 30 seconds.
I guess the other thing is I think we have to look at federal dollars. Is our goal to get federal dollars, or is our goal to have the community we want?
Thanks for coming. Bob, Nancy, you're on deck.
Yep, my name's Bob Giordano. I direct Missoula Institute for Sustainable Transportation. And I'd like to echo that last speaker. We get $40 million for this project. It's the local people who have to maintain the project for a long time. That's a big cost. We keep referring to Stevens. There's some big differences between what's being proposed in Stevens. One is, if you look in the EIS and on these maps, at Russell and 3rd, that would be, you count up all the turn lanes around that intersection, it would be 24 turn lanes. Mullen and Reserve right now has 22 lanes when you add it up. So we're talking something with more lanes when you add up all the turning lanes than Mullen Reserve. We've had 2 deaths on Reserve this summer, a motorcyclist and a cyclist. These large signalized intersections present huge challenges, and I would say they're not human friendly. Another difference is Stevens did not remove any homes or businesses, 21 homes and businesses, when affordable housing and housing stock is such an issue in the community. I think we really need to examine whether it's worth removing that many places that people live and frequent. And again, the volumes that are projected for Stevens, 34,000, for this Russell project, 34,000 cars. Reserve has 35,000 today. So we can't just say we're going to build something that looks like Stevens. Stevens has 16,000 cars today. So imagine Stevens with more than twice the amount of traffic today. So it's not just the look, it's the character. I would say it would be worthwhile to change Reserve into something more like Stevens. And perhaps for Russell, we're thinking more of an Arthur or a neighborhood. 30 seconds? Okay, I'm going to speed through this. The 3+ can work. A single lane roundabout at Russell 3rd can handle about 15% more traffic than today. The projections for this project are 37% more traffic. Let's work as a community to lower our future driving. It's already happening. As a community, we can do that. Envision Missoula talked about, the phone survey said, people overwhelmingly have said, let's have more walking facilities, biking, transit. And as someone else said, it doesn't mean everyone has to stop driving. It's more of a balanced approach. And we can save a lot of money to do that. The Citizen Advisory Committee, I was on that.
Got a lot more, Bob. I'll invite you to come back on the second round.
Okay. 10 seconds.
Wrap it up.
10 seconds. Citizen Advisory Committee scored the 3-lane the highest. Rose Park has scored unanimously for a 3-lane. So I would just encourage everyone to keep working on this, and let's make Russell a street we can be proud of. Thank you.
You need to listen to these. I need to listen to these. Thanks, Bob. Nancy, and then Anne Marie, you're up on deck here.
Okay. My name is Nancy Wilson. I work for ASUM Transportation. I can tell you that students have definitely changed their behavior since gas prices have risen. We counted bikes the last 2 days. We cannot get enough bike parking on campus right now. It's amazing. I wish I had the numbers to give you, but it is a substantial increase. And I can tell you on the trails and paths, when I ride my bike, there is congestion on trails and paths right now. People are changing their behavior. So with that, I wanted to talk about a couple other things, a little more personal. I have 2 teenage daughters, and those teenage daughters have very limited budget for school clothes. One of them says, I want leather boots. And I say, well, go ahead and get your $200 leather boots. The other one's going to get tennis shoes and jeans and T-shirts. I have to say to you that this project is a project that is buying Missoula just leather boots. We aren't getting the rest of what we need in Missoula. Roger Millar, director of OPG, points out that Missoula region gets only 2%, and this could be argued by the state, only 2% of the federal transportation dollars that come to the state. We need that 2% of the state's federal transportation dollars to be spent wisely. The state gets these federal dollars annually and has to spend these dollars annually. Yet, the Department of Transportation insists that Missoula save for this super expensive and super huge Russell project. This means that each year the money that Missoula is saving for this project is being spent somewhere else in Montana. And it also means that actually the rest of this project cannot be built for 20 years. That's a long time to save the money that's not actually being saved and is being spent somewhere else in the state.
About 30 seconds, Nancy.
This is quick, I hope.
Okay.
Brian Schweitzer suggests in one of his ads that the federal government tried to step too hard on Montanans by forcing federal IDs on them. I would suggest tonight that the city government stand up to the state and say the same thing about MDT and their position on Russell. I would also suggest that Max Baucus be told that the Federal Transportation Department is making it impossible for us to spend the $5 million that he worked so hard for us to get to build a bridge. Missoulians are concerned that we are going to have a bridge that's going to fall into the river if we don't get something built. Let us build something that we can be proud of. We cannot afford this project. We need to look again at the 3+ that the neighbors and that comments from public are actually being listened to and was developed.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Anne Marie Klaus, and then Jordan on deck.
Thank you. My name is Anna Marie Klaus. I'm the mother of the Pink Grizzly, if you know where that is. Shane was supposed to be here tonight, but he had a meeting. You get me. And he wanted me to tell you that he's all for, he calls it the Super 2 lane with the turn lane. And the, oh, this thing dying, is it? The 4-lane bridge. Because you're going to have a direct impact on the Pink Grizzly if you do all of these things that you're planning to do. You'll destroy the whole front part of the Pink Grizzly. But also I want to tell you I've had a lot of things in the mail about the roundabout on 3rd and Russell. If you do that, be prepared for lots of death and lots of lawsuits, because even at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's busy. And you said when we started that you're here to listen to us. Remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Hess, and then Mr. Snodgrass.
Great, thanks, Daryl. I have a couple quick points. My first, I'm going to echo what Bob had to say about the intersection at 3rd and Russell. That would become the largest intersection in Missoula at that time. And I think that actually alone makes the project not meet the purpose and need. Bike lanes alone are not enough to create a safe biking facility. We need safe intersections that are human scale, that bicycles can go through without passing through without crossing paths with 24 lanes of traffic. And that's where my biggest concern with this project is the footprint of that intersection. Reserve is such a dead zone when it comes to bikes, and it's such a dangerous area for bicyclists, with fatalities and injuries occurring out there, and so I think that's a big concern. Also, I would like to see, I don't know if this is possible, but I'd like to see if it is, if there's some kind of provision to build transit funding into an EIS. I don't know if there is, but I'd love to hear that addressed. And finally, I want to address the costs. Attending the long-range transportation plan meeting on Monday, where the transportation projects were prioritized for the next 20-some years, a few cost things of the Russell Street project really bothered me. That was the real, the absolute cost of 40+ million plus inflation in the year of construction. But not only that, but the time costs of maybe being 20 some odd years. I'm a college student in my 20s. I'm going to be in my late 40s by the time this is all said and done, and I think that that's a long time for the neighborhood to wait for a number of reasons, but particularly ADA compliance. If the project were completed in 2027, I believe, that'd be about nearly 30 years of 26 years, I guess, of non-compliance for ADA with sidewalks that aren't compliant or that are non-existent at this point. And going back to what Nancy said as well, that the sort of opportunity costs of not completing other projects. I think we need to spend our funding on intelligent transportation projects that.
Jordan, getting close.
Okay, I'll wrap this up quick. That projects like signal optimization, roundabouts to make the most of our infrastructure, just things that aren't quite so expensive. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. Mr. Snodgrass, and then Peggy Miller is on deck. Peggy still here?
Go ahead. I'm familiar with NEPA, and I find that this draft EIS is deficient in many areas, including socioeconomic impact and air quality, among other deficiencies.
You need to get closer to the mic so we can.
The EIS purports to offer reductions in congestion. Has anyone been to a major city over the last 10 years? Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, Seattle, San Francisco all suffer from gridlock, and they have built more and more and more roads, and what has happened is that more and more cars appear, and you have problems such as those you see right here out on Reserve Street, which was widened not very long ago and which also suffers from gridlock. This draft EIS fails utterly to address the cumulative impacts of widened roadways. That's a focus of NEPA. Roadways that conduct vehicular traffic in increasing volumes at higher speeds, generating alarming levels of particulate, and which will interconnect with other wide and widened roadways that generate more of the same dangerous aerosolized particulate and other air toxics, causing significant cumulative impacts, which again, this EIS fails to address. The pollutants are dangerous and they're ubiquitous. Wherever there is vehicle traffic, these pollutants are found far and wide, everywhere. The following language from the EIS in question should not escape scrutiny by people who are concerned about this plan and its insufficiency. Quote, according to the Federal Highway Administration analysis, even if vehicle miles of travel increased by 64%, reductions of 57 to 87% on mobile air source toxics, CARS, are projected from 2000 to 2020. Then the EIS goes on to say that under the interim guidance guidelines issued for air toxics analysis in environmental,
about 30 seconds.
In environmental documents, you know, I really resent the fact that you're cutting people off. NEPA, as you well know, says that people are to be allowed more opportunity for comment, not less.
Let me explain. What we're trying to do is provide everybody ample opportunity to
I'll
speak.
close
so
very
that
quickly
we
then.
can, thank you.
You're not complying with the Montana Constitution either. So what they're saying here is that this is a minor project, but they acknowledge that they can't predict what the health effects will be of this project. They simply don't have the data. The EPA has tightened up the regulations because they know that projects like this make people sick. And the studies show that if you live near a big road with fast traffic, you have adverse birth outcomes, increased cardiovascular disease, strokes, morbidity, and death. This EIS does not address this at all. I'm also concerned about the grave potential for public works fraud. I think it's rampant here in Missoula, and I think the people of Missoula really have to start looking at what this Public Works Department and the political doormats in Helena, Montana are doing with our tax money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snodgrass. Peggy Miller and Kay Whitlock. You'll be next.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I want to show something. I've got an extremely amateurish. Your fifth grader could have done a far better job at painting this than I did, but I'm going to show it anyway. And the reason being, after I left the meeting that was held at the church, I don't know, a few weeks ago on the same subject, I realized first of all, I support the 3+ plan generally from everything I have known in the past about transportation traffic and concerned about future traffic problems have not been included in the projection, as well as the oil crisis, et cetera, I think will impact our traffic in ways we're not yet including in projections because we don't yet know how much it will impact. And so I don't think this plan, and I think 3+ is closer to what we'll need overall than what has been suggested. So 3+ is generally what I support. But I was really trying to figure out, I don't believe in bicycles having to go. I live on 7th, 3 doors from Russell. 7th Street has tons of bicycle traffic, tons of stroller, women and men pushing strollers, bicycles pulling strollers. I see it increasing all the time. And so I went home and tried to think through, and basically, and I'm embarrassed about this, I don't know if you can see this or not, but I painted basically, thank you, an image of as we take like 3rd and Russell, 14th Street and Russell, and I was even suggesting 7th Street and Russell, a smaller one, that we emphasize bicycles, that we're moving ahead with our knowledge and our awareness, and everything we've all said is, how do we make this a community? If we were to build overpasses or bridges or whatever you want to call them that were large enough, they could even have lights on them, they could have a couple benches on top, so that the bicycles, the strollers, etc., so the bike lanes along Russell connected to the end. And so you can even build them large enough so you have a fountain in the center. They can be beautiful with a lot of trees, and it would create a total incentive for bicyclists, strollers, that whole traffic, and it would connect both sides of Russell in a totally different way. If you have them go underneath Russell, they'll be dark. I've lived in a lot of cities where they've used those. People don't want to use them at night. People don't want to push strollers under tunnels at night. They get smelly, they get dank. There's a lot of problems with them. And so I don't think that's what we're striving to have here in this community. And I would recommend that we think of something to add to this plan. And I would prefer the 3+ type of approach, which really encouraged bicycles and made a very positive area for them. Thanks, you.
Peggy. Kay Whitlock and then Linda Smith. Kay Whitlock and then Linda Smith. Go.
I'm Kay Whitlock. I live on Curtis Street, the most cul-de-sac neighborhood in Missoula. We're trying to make a left turn onto 3rd Street is a challenge, to say the least. But I don't want to talk about South 3rd tonight. I think that's a conversation that there needs to be a lot more community conversation in our neighborhood and in adjacent neighborhoods. I do want to speak against the preferred Russell Street alternative. I think there are a lot of things at stake, and I want to echo the people who have said we're not just building roads, we're trying to build community. 8 years ago, in 2001, I was one of the people who was not a formal member of the Citizens Advisory Committee to this project, but was a concerned neighborhood member who wanted to go and express some concerns about it. For 8 years, there's never been an answer or even seriously taking up one of the questions that I raised that was not raised only by me, but was a concern that was being raised more generally in my neighborhood at the time. And that was, what about the people that these projects are proposing to displace? How can we create projects that help create safer, more livable, more walkable, more bicyclable communities that help move traffic that's not only motored traffic, but pedestrian traffic more safely, and in ways that actually build community, not just traffic patterns. And one of the things we were concerned about was what's going to happen to the people whose properties are going to be taken over. I asked specifically, time after time, how are they going to be able to afford not just to move somewhere else, but to move somewhere else where they're going to have as good a quality of life or as good a quality of business as they have now? What kind of legal help are they going to get? What kind of rights do they have? What's going to be the compensation? And I would get general answers. Oh, don't worry, it'll be fair. But nobody ever answered those questions, and it's 8 years later, and nobody is answering those questions. And I want those kinds of questions answered. And my concern is that this whole alternative go back and we do a new analysis based on something, as the citizen-initiated 3+ project has done, to talk about how to create effective community building transportation that does not displace so many residents and so many businesses. In 8 years, you'd think somebody could give us clear answers to that question, and I call for that now.
Thank you, Kay. Linda Smith.
You know, my name is Linda Smith, and I did call down to Public Works to find out how much time I'd have tonight, and I was told approximately the amount at the City Council, so I have approximately 3 minutes.
Go for it.
Okay.
We won't count that introduction.
All right.
Then Tom Facey, if you're back, you're on deck.
Okay. My name is Linda Smith. I'm a member of the Rose Park Neighborhood Council and on the Rose Parks Transportation Committee. I was the Rose Park representative to the Advisory Committee for Rebuilding Russell and South 3rd. The committee was created in November of 2000. It was a committee made up of 24 citizens representing local businesses, corridor residents, bike, ped, trail groups, Montana Rail Link, Missoula Chamber of Commerce, low-income housing, and 6 neighborhood councils on both sides of Russell. There were also some city staff members on the committee as non-voting members. In the partnering workshop held in November 2000, and here's the green document that lays all this out, the advisory committee duties included, quote, the advisory committee is key to developing this project and assuring the public has full input into formulating the project, unquote. The advisory committee met monthly, sometimes twice monthly, for 6 months, from November 2000 through May 2001, learning transportation concepts and language, and developed a purpose and need statement for the project, including a sentence that said, quote, develop a transportation facility that maintains or enhances a sense of the residential and commercial neighborhoods, unquote. I'll skip a little bit here. The advisory committee was abruptly disbanded in May 2001 without being able to make recommendations for a preferred alternative for Russell and South 3rd. And now I'll move on to another. The record needs to be corrected. Public Works Director Steve King said in last Sunday's Missoulian article, quote, that the committee fulfilled its role early on and the preferred alternative reflects its views, unquote. The committee was not given a chance to express its views or make recommendations for the preferred alternative. And the DEIS in section 7.1 under Project Advisory Committee says, quote, having fulfilled their intended responsibilities to the proposed project, the committee was disbanded in 2006. Again, the advisory committee was not allowed to fulfill its responsibilities. No further meetings were held after May 2001. No reason was given for ending the committee meetings, and I never got a letter.
About 30 seconds or so.
I'm finishing this piece here. In today's op-ed, Steve King also held up Stevens Avenue as the model for a neighborhood-sensitive street. Stevens, I live right near it. Stevens was a dangerously wide street that neighbors could not safely cross. Some had been hit by cars. It was narrowed significantly with a very wide median, and no homes or businesses were taken out. However, the speed limit remained 35 miles per hour, and you don't see many bike riders or pedestrians on Stevens Avenue. Now, I brought my show and tell here. The preferred alternative in the DEIS targets 11 homes and 10 businesses for full acquisition, displacing people from their homes and businesses. I decided to take pictures of some of those affordable homes and local businesses and a pocket park that will be removed along Russell Street. While taking pictures, I met Diana Sorensen. She and her husband Wes have lived at 915 Kern. It's this house right here, for 32 years, raising their children on a block with smaller homes, mostly owner-occupied. She said, quote, we can live with 3 lanes. Anything more than that, we're really up against it. And if they're displaced from their homes, she doubts they can afford to buy a home in Missoula given house prices in the Missoula market, and would probably have to live in their 5th wheel. In the DEIS section of the preferred alternative that addresses social impacts, there's a statement that sufficient housing is available in the community.
You're already about 4 minutes.
What the DEIS analysis does not acknowledge is that people displaced from affordable homes will likely not be compensated enough in a government buyout to be able to acquire equivalent housing because housing prices are so high and affordable housing is in such short supply in Missoula that the mayor has created an affordable housing initiative. So I believe that the social impacts with financial implications have not been adequately addressed in the DEIS. I firmly believe that the Citizens Advisory Committee had been allowed to participate in the selection of the preferred alternative for Russell and South 3rd, that so much money and time would not have been spent on an alternative so unsuited to Missoula's transportation needs at this time, that a different alternative would have been designed to create a blended alternative for the different sections of Russell that acknowledges the interests of business owners and homeowners along Russell. while providing safety and mobility for users of all forms of transportation.
Tom Facey.
Thank you. I apologize for my tardiness. I'm Tom Facey. I was lucky enough to represent this neighborhood in the legislature from 1999 to 2005. When we started this process out in 2000, the consistent message was, please keep my neighborhood character. Keep it narrow, keep it so the strollers and the bikes can be safe, the kids can be crossing safe. In all honesty, they don't want a Berlin Wall built down the middle of Russell Street. They need a place that lets them have their community. I would suggest that if you build something like the 3+, that the motorists will vote with their steering wheel. If it doesn't work, they'll find somewhere else. I know that causes problems on the somewhere else, but please respect the character of the neighborhood by keeping this road the correct proportion for the size of the neighborhood and so people can live here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Facey. Stephen Schambell or Ryan Newhouse, either one of them still here or returned? Okay, we are through our list. We're not done. We are through our list. I do appreciate people respecting the time constraint. We're just trying to make sure that we got a lot of folks here, and I'm sure there's a lot more that would like to speak. So we just want to, and we'll stay here as long as people want to keep commenting. But if we can, we'd still like to keep it to a couple minutes, just to be respectful of everybody's time here. Okay? If you'd state, so I can get your name and address now, just on the record. If I can get your name and address, you can go ahead and speak.
You're asking for my name. Nancy McCourt.
McCord?
McCourt.
McCourt. And an address? In the microphone.
621 Blaine.
620 what?
Blaine, B-L-A-I-N-E.
Great. Go ahead, Nancy. Thank you.
My turn?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Nancy McCourt. I'm going to quickly try to cover my comments under two different hats. First hat, I need my glasses for. I'm on the leadership team for the Rose Park Neighborhood Council, and I'm here to read the resolution that was passed on 9/17/08 at a special Rose Park neighborhood meeting held specific to discuss the Russell Street plan. Whereas improving Russell Street has been under discussion for many years in Missoula, and a preferred alternative has been selected with a width of 5 lanes that removes 11 homes and may remove an additional 13 single-family homes due to right-of-way acquisition and possibly 10 businesses, whereas Russell Street currently travels through both business areas and neighborhoods, whereas improving a street through a neighborhood should mean maintaining or enhancing businesses and homes alongside it while accommodating all forms of transportation, whereas a blended lane option, more lanes in business areas, fewer lanes in neighborhoods, does not require eliminating existing businesses and homes, whereas the Citizens Plan for Russell expands roadway capacity for bikes, pedestrians, buses, and cars without having to widen the existing street, we, members of the Rose Park Neighborhood Council, resolve to support adoption of an alternative for reconstructing Russell Street, the Citizens Plan for Russell, that provides enhanced safety and mobility for pedestrians, bikes, buses, and cars while keeping intact the businesses and residential neighborhoods along Russell. We direct our leadership team to take action by writing letters to the mayor, city council representatives, and other public officials in support of the only existing alternative that addresses the above concerns, the Citizens Plan for Russell, also known as 3+ Russell, and encourage individual members to join in supporting this alternative for Russell. The vote was 11 Rose Park residents in favor of the 3+ Russell alternative. 9 non-residents were attending the meeting, also voted to adopt this resolution, and 2 non-Rose Park residents were opposed to this resolution. So clearly the preferred alternative is not preferred by Rose Park neighborhood. My second hat is as a Rose Park neighborhood member. I've lived in the Rose Park neighborhood for almost 15 years. I'm a University of Montana graduate a couple times, and I want to address something that doesn't get talked about, and maybe it's that elephant under the carpet in our community sometimes, but there's a disconnect between the east end of town and the west end of town. There's a perceived disconnect between University and the rest of Missoula, and it's my feeling that this road, a 5-lane road down Russell, will only serve as a geographical boundary in addition to this cultural boundary that so many of us are trying to overcome. Secondly, I'm going to be moving my business to Russell Street, and I don't feel like that the 5-lane alternative is going to be conducive to the types of customers and the types of transportation that my customers utilize. And I also just don't think it's the kind of place that I want to be with my business next to something that would look more like Reserve Street. And I think is at 24 lanes. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the biggest intersection in the whole state of Montana. So very briefly, I did wait a long time. I want to remind everybody here, I want to thank everybody here for coming, because it would be a real bummer if I were here sharing these comments to just a handful of people. And so thank you to everyone who stuck it out tonight. The federal money is our money. It's not their money. It's our money. So we should be directing what happens to federal money and not sit and say they get to tell us what to do with their money. It's our money. And I do have ultimate respect and gratitude for the work you guys have done. Unfortunately, it usually gets to this point in most projects before you get this kind of public involvement. Bigger streets don't equal cars that move faster. Reserve Street is an example of that. Roundabouts do work. Roundabouts are not dangerous and scary. You just need to understand them and be familiar with them. Portland, Oregon is a beautiful city that has made effective use of roundabouts on very busy streets. And I want to challenge you gentlemen and Mr. Lynch, thank you for coming, but this is an innovative time. We're on the cusp of big changes with transportation, and Missoula embraces change. Missoula embraces innovation, and I challenge you, Mr. Lynch, and I challenge you gentlemen to go back to the drawing board and come up with something new and different. And if the 3+ for Russell won't work, find something like it that will, please. Thank you.
Go ahead. I'll do it afterwards. All right.
Good evening. My name is John Wolverton. I'm a resident of this neighborhood right here. I live on 8th Street, about 2 blocks from Russell Street. I also am on the leadership team for the Neighborhood Council. I am also an active member of Bike Walk Alliance for Missoula. And speaking specifically about Russell Street and this preferred alternative, not so much 3rd Street, I've had the occasion to hear about this interesting test that we can put to development or any kind of development activity to see if it's really positive for a community and if it will pass these 5 tests. So think about this. The popsicle test. Can you go to the store, buy a popsicle, and walk home without it melting all over your hand? And I think when you're having to cross huge roadways with lots of complicated problems for pedestrians, that's not going to happen. It fails. The smooch test. This is somewhere where you're going to want to walk next to your honey, hand in hand, and you might stop at a corner or behind a tree and smooch instead of sitting there worried about, what's the traffic doing or am I getting diesel fumes thrown into my face? So there's a fail. The kid test. Are parents going to be comfortable letting their kids cross this roadway or go to school anywhere near this thing? I think that's a failure. The seniors test. People of limited mobility, are they going to be able to cross this? A big, wide alternative, like this preferred alternative, wide roadway? That is no. They're not going to be able to. That's not fair. The commons test. Is the development going to give back to the community in a way that does not harm it? And I think it fails that. Those are the 5 tests. I want to talk a little bit more about our Montana values. What are our Montana values? Think about the things that you cherish or that are important to you. One of the things I think that's important is fairness. And we've heard a lot from other people about the issue about housing. Is it right for us to knock down homes and businesses, to impact neighborhoods in such a profound way just so motor vehicles can move through an area faster. And I don't think that's fair. Another one of our Montana values is family. Montanans want safe and friendly spaces and places for their neighborhoods so they can raise their kids and live and work and play in a safe manner. I don't think this is going to be safe. Freedom and choice. We are a progressive, intelligent community, and we have the right to decide what our community will look like. And I don't think this is being fair to the community. And thrift, $40 million project. We're in dire need of transportation funds to fix all sorts of roads all over our community. Just think of if we could save some money on this with a community-friendly, modest alternative, a human-scale roadway, what we can do with the rest of that money to make our roadways better in the rest of our community. So I want to ask you, all of you, and particularly our leadership, particularly our city leadership and our public servants, to reflect on our Montana community values. Does this preferred alternative truly reflect the will of our community? Does it honor our intelligence and the flexibility of our citizens? And I don't think it does. Thank you.
Thanks, John. How many more people would like to speak this evening? Got a handful? Okay, good. Before, we had a huge flood leave a minute ago. Just want to reiterate, feel free to leave comments tonight. If you don't want to wait, take advantage of the court reporter here in the corner if you want to leave a verbal comment before you leave. There are other opportunities to leave comments. You got till October 20th. So please take any avenue you can to leave us some comments. And but we'll continue to go here and continue to take comments. Ethel, great to see you.
Ethel McDonald, 316 West Central. You've heard a lot of people talk about community, the concern about dividing the community. You've also heard a lot of people angry at feeling they haven't been heard. The Citizens Advisory Committee was not properly paid attention to. I want to urge you, well, first I also want to acknowledge we're all in a hurry to see Russell improved. I don't think any of us think it's a good street for anybody. I avoid it on my bike completely and off well, the car isn't that bad. The traffic moves. It's not that bad in a car, but it's terrible for bikes and peds. But we do, I think, all want to see it improved. And I understand Steve King's frustration. We all have it at 8 years of nothing happening. But it will happen faster if you do listen, if you recognize the amount of public opposition to this, and you come back with a 3-lane proposal between 3rd and Mount particularly, with roundabouts. I appreciate your attempt to include roundabouts. I absolutely think that they keep traffic moving and they increase the capacity because the traffic keeps moving. You don't get the jams. You have slow traffic. My concern with the 4 lanes is that it divides the community, no matter if you do have good bike lanes, as someone else said. If you can't get across the street easily, it doesn't do you much good to have that bike lane. I'm sorry, lost my train of thought there. I think that it is extremely important that we not have another street that divides the community, and we can have less. Oh, I know what I wanted to question in particular. We had been told, I understood from Steve King at, I think, the Rose Park or some meeting, that you had to do the whole corridor, 3rd and Russell, all the way, and you had to do that in this statement, that you, even though we know we don't have funding for the rest of Russell forever, you have to do that now in this statement, and my understanding is then you're tied to it. And that is the concern of some of us, many of us. And once this comes, it's at this point that I beg you to not ignore all of this comment and come back with 5 lanes again. We'll never get it done because we're going to go on forever fighting about it, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethel. Joe, can you just state your name and address for the recording?
My name is Joe LaVisca. My address is 1702 Shibear Lane. That's in Arlee.
Thanks, Joe.
I'm a relatively new member of this community here in Missoula. I'm an implant, transplant, whatever you say. I've been here for 5 years now, and I'm mainly speaking because I believe that it's important to be speaking, and I think that everyone should line up and just say why they're here and what they feel about this. I'm also mainly speaking because I'm such an avid cyclist, and I love to ride on the road, and I'm a vehicular cyclist, which means I'm willing to ride on Russell, whether it's a bad road or a good road. But boy, do I love good roads, and boy, do I love good communities. And so many of the improvements that a lot of you guys have been asking for, I have a feeling that these gentlemen and lady up here are thinking, well, our preferred alternative will solve that, or at least will address that. And I think every alternative addresses that, because if you throw a rock at Russell Street, it will improve the road, I think. But as a new community member, I look at Missoula and I think, God, I love this place. I love being a recreationalist here. I love being a commuter here. I'm from Seattle, and I'm a commuter there when I live there. I ride on Aurora Avenue. I ride on Lake City Way. It's not very much fun, but I do it. But thinking about spending large portions of my life here in Missoula, I want to be proud of where I live, and I want to have people come here and show them, hey, check out this place that they built. It's new, it's progressive, it's fun to ride on. More people are riding their bikes in the city because of it. So, you know, hey, maybe it doesn't work because of funding. I don't have all the technical stuff, but it should work. You should make it work. And if you drove here today, you should drive home and park your car in the garage, lock it up, and take your bike out next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Alex, can I get your address? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was one over here. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carla Green.
Can I get your name again? I'm sorry.
Huh? Carla Green.
Carla Green?
Yes.
And an address?
I'm at 370 Strand. I own my house, and I do worry about my home value, even maybe 4 or 5 blocks, 6 blocks, I guess. And when the gas prices went up, I basically parked my car. I probably fill my gas tank once every 2 months or so. And I would love to see more company out there. I still feel awfully lonely out there on the streets. I want to see more people on bikes. I want to make it as bike friendly as possible. I would not dream of ever riding my bike out to. I get in my car to go out to Costco. I won't ride my bike down the Reserve Street. If it was an environment that I wanted to ride, I'd ride, but it's not. So I didn't think about what I was going to say. I just wanted to say I use my bike as my main source of transportation. I have it parked outside, and I also want to. I always want to ask now, whose idea was this and why? Who is benefiting from this? That's what we need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
I'm Alex Taft at 439 Connell Avenue. I spent 30 years planning and designing transportation projects in my career. And I think this project is on shaky legal grounds in 2 aspects. One is the property takings involved in the preferred alternative, and 2 is the treatment of the Citizens Advisory Committee and the public process that's been undertaken. I think the city and the state and the feds have an opportunity to develop a supplemental EIS by examining the so-called citizens plan, the 3+ plan, which, unlike the preferred alternative, which takes 21 properties and affects 3-4F properties, the 3+ plan takes no properties and affects no 4F properties. And in the area of citizen participation, there is a petition of over 1,000 names so far in support of the 3+ plan, which will be submitted before the close of public comment. So I think there's a real opportunity for the city and the other agencies to examine the 3+ plan and make adjustments to their preferred alternative based on that to avoid any kind of legal actions that might take place. Thanks.
My name is Jody Ellison Bonnell. I am here mostly to represent Sussex School. I am not a member of the board, but the board has authorized me to represent the school on this project in a couple of aspects. I'll be submitting my own personal comments in writing. What happens with Russell and Third has a huge impact on Sussex School. Sussex School has been located in its present location northwest of the Good Food Store on 1st Street since the mid-1980s. We own the property outright. We have 90 students, K through 8, and we will be expanding our student body significantly in the next few years to about 115. None of our students live in the neighborhood. They all have to come from other places around Missoula and a few out of town. How our students get to school is something that we care about quite a bit, and we need to look carefully at our school's transportation impacts. The board would like me to offer support for two aspects of just about all the designs that we've seen here. One is below-grade crossings for Russell Street. There are 3 proposed right now. I realize those are in the plans. They don't seem to be particularly controversial. It is particularly important that those remain in the plan no matter what happens. The other aspect that we would like to support is improved pedestrian safety at 3rd and Catlin. Every afternoon, a staff member from Sussex has to walk the students across the street to the bus. That's because we've lost bus service in the area, and that's another matter that we are dealing with. But 3rd in its present configuration, of course, is not safe. The city has made some improvements with signage, but we still don't have anything like a school crossing sign, even though we've been in our present location for this many years. The board cannot offer a comment at this time on 3 lanes versus 5 lanes versus anything else, because we don't yet have those detailed safety studies. I would like to see in the final EIS, please, some acknowledgement that there is a permanently located private school very close to this intersection, and to please address those detailed safety studies, because we really can't make a decision as a school without that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Weiss.
Hi, my name is Ben Weiss. I live at 700 Palmer Street on the north side, a neighborhood not directly affected, but sort of. I am a cyclist and driver, and I can sort of see the benefits of all plans that are being considered, but I'm curious why there aren't even more alternatives. I guess I also understand the need to expedite this process, as Russell's terrible. But why weren't segregated bike lanes considered, or and how does the EIS incorporate the potential development of the brownfield just north of the Holiday there, or the potential development of the old sawmill district, or some of the other, maybe the downtown master plan that is being considered? Are all of those things being incorporated into what we are looking at? I think, like other people have said, we have a real potential to develop Missoula for the future and be very innovative, and I think that we need to look bigger than just this intersection, at least for a little while.
Melissa Schmidt.
Hi. I'm a resident of the Riverfront neighborhood, which is, I live really close to Russell Street. And I want to say, first of all, that I'm totally opposed to this preferred alternative. I think it's a terrible idea. And I want to address my comments to Steve King because as a resident of Riverfront neighborhood, I am involved with the neighborhood council and the community forum. And in community forum, we've had presentations from the schools and from the city county health department encouraging us to encourage our neighbors to bicycle and walk. And I don't understand why Public Works isn't working in correlation with the city county health department for the same goals. I don't understand what benefit there is to this road for our community and for our neighborhood. It would create a huge deterrent from anybody who lives west of Russell to cross on bicycles or walking. It would be almost impossible during rush hour to get 5 lanes of traffic to stop so that somebody may cross the street. And these tunnels that you've mentioned at 11th and Wyoming are way out of anybody's way. I would not recommend, if I lived west of Russell, to my children to travel all the way to Wyoming to cross it. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And I would not recommend to my children that they bicycle along Russell as a 5-lane road. The thought of it reminds me so much of Reserve Street. How many people bicycle on Reserve Street? Very few, and those people probably don't have any other options. So this is a bad idea.
Thank you. Elizabeth Rose.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rose. I'm a member of MIST, and I'm a cyclist. And I know from experience that just my interactions with Reserve Street have not been pleasant, and I do believe that building more lanes for traffic will just increase the traffic and will make people want to use that as a fast alternative. And in the few times that I have driven on Reserve Street, I have never been comfortable, and I find it very frustrating, and it's just not a smooth operation. And I think that Russell Street will echo that, and I'm opposed to it because as it is, it's complicated enough. I mean, definitely something needs to happen, but as a cyclist, I do not see 4 lanes being a positive thing. So, thank you.
I'm Patricia Hogan, and I live on 12th Street, 2 blocks off of Russell. And I would like to take issue with your answer, Daryl, to the fella who asked who chose the preferred alternative. It's been my impression over the years attending these public meetings ever since the inception of this project that the public opinion has been more in favor of a human scale Russell Street corridor and opposed to the increased number of lanes along Russell, and that opposition is increasing.
Tricia. Dan O'Neill.
Thank you. I'm a part-time resident of Missoula, and I'd say I live in Butte and I maintain space here, but I've been here since 2001, and what I would like to remind people is, look around at the other communities and look at what has happened here in 3 years. You've gotten 39th Street, Russell Street, Orange Street, or this Russell Street project, and I think you guys should be lucky to even have any of these considered. And for what it's going to do to improve that, there's no street trees, there's no pathways, there's no bike lanes at all. So whatever you do, I can't even believe anyone's against any of it. So I just encourage you, if you're ever driving around the state, look at some of the other cities that don't have this.
Thanks, Dan. Craig Holtorf.
Three minutes, boy, here we go. I'm disappointed in the way this process has gone from how the advisory
council was not included. I'm questioning an error I see on page 13 of the map of the overview. It shows the raised median on Russell on both the north and south side where it should be a turn lane. So I'm wondering how the map is wrong, showing a black bar and not showing a turn lane to turn off of Russell to 3rd, either direction. And if that could be a deal stop, I don't know where we're at to revise it or what we need to do. There was 2 articles in the Missoulian. You can find them now if you go to the archives. We have so much news in Missoula, it's already there. It was just on there Sunday. And in the article, Russell only focuses on rush hour, many say. The quote from Administrative Officer Bruce Bender, "There is only enough money to rebuild from Russell Street to 3rd now. That leaves plenty of time to fine-tune the southern portion, which runs through a more residential area." Again, it was said in the article, "Years in waiting, Russell 3rd project remains contentious." CAO Bender wants to wrap up the EIS as quickly as possible. He'd like community support to preferred alternative in the draft EIS so the city at least can build from West Broadway to 3rd. Then he said the city can work with the neighbors on exactly what to build from 3rd Street on down. There isn't federal money on that portion anyway. When I read the EIS online, I saw something to the effect of the only way to get out of the 5 streets if we go with it now at the time of phase build out is if there's substantial decline, and it's very vague and ambiguous wording. I would like to see some hard numbers from the state so we can have a challenge for Missoula community. What is that number? If we don't hit it by 2020, I don't want to hear substantial is your definition then instead of now. I'm upset that Steve King said that this is not a popularity contest. If it's not, then what am I doing here at this meeting? And why is there a public process where you can comment on it till October 20th? And there was an article also, in that article in the Missoulian, the reporter said that some people feel that people that go to the meetings don't represent all of Missoula. Well, if you're not here and you don't give public comment, then I don't understand how your opinion even matters, because this is the process and you need to be here as part of it. So I thank everybody for this. I live on Reserve out near 3rd. Reserve's nuts. You can't ride a bike on that. I've had a bicycle rider on my windshield at 10 o'clock at night after he hit my front fender because I pulled out in front of him. Why? Because his headlight wasn't working as best as we could determine. The state couldn't determine it. He was wearing all black. 5 lanes of traffic is nuts to cross. I mean, if you go from this bike lane and you're going to go over there, 2 lanes, turn lane, 2 more, wow, it's not working. And bikes aren't an all-year solution. Hi, Hamilton, you know, you'd think we're nuts up here in Missoula, and, you know, not all of us ride bikes in the winter, but some of us do. We need to look at all of it. 3rd Street being 3 lanes. I came here tonight at 5:45. It was backed up going westbound from Reserve all the way to Curtis. So you're going to have a major super highway on Russell dumping all these cars onto 3rd Street. What are you going to stack them all the way back up to Russell? That's not going to work. We need to look at the numbers. We need to see, and maybe I didn't have time to read completely through the EIS. I'll be giving more comments later, but that's just things that are on my mind right now. I encourage the 3+ design. I encourage us saying, no, stop. You know, we're talking bailout nationwide. Let's bail out.
Thanks, Craig. Anybody else? Go ahead.
So I'm just taking the...
Can I get your name and address, please?
My name is Greg Larry. I live at 1240 South 2nd Street West, about a block from Russell, which we just purchased a house about 2 years ago. I'm taking the encouragement from this kid back here who suggested everybody should get up and talk. But I'm pretty new to the problem, and just based on what I heard tonight, I disapprove of the selected choice. And I think my main observation, I guess, and where I'm most discouraged is when I observe how you guys receive the comments, and it's not necessarily, it seems like half the time you guys are really attentive, and half time you might be in a different state. Maybe you want to be home with your kids or with your wife. But but in government in general, I see the disconnect between what the public wants and what people want to, how they want to move the society forward, and then what really happens at the government level when things get implemented. And you guys seem like, to me, that you're the one that are the interface between us and what really happens, and you have the power. And just as you also are the experts, and as being an expert, you should take what you know in terms of the field and what people tell you is the proper way to instruct a road, but then also incorporate a creative side that really progresses the, I guess, transportation. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Greg. Anybody else want to speak? Come on up. Get your name and address so we can get them.
My name is Melody Johnson.
Melanie Johnson.
I live in number 11 Ada Lane, Mobile City Trailer Park.
Okay.
Now, the proposal that you plan on doing at this point right now has me deeply offended and scared to death, because they want to take River Road and they want to put it down through the trailer court, over Idaho Street, and then they want to put it up Catlin to Wyoming. That takes 6 trailers out of there. Mine, one of them. All right, my trailer's old. The city of Missoula has made it that my trailer cannot even move into a trailer park unless it's a 1980 or newer. And they may have raised the stakes on that. So I'm basically stranded and told, hey, we're going to do it anyways. We're going to put her right on down through the trailer court. We have a well in my yard. We have a well up in the front. The Mobile City is on well water. It comes down through the court, it feeds the whole trailer court, it goes into my yard, it goes across the street, and it feeds the duplexes over there across the street. The house up on the corner that you propose on taking out of there has its own well too. The city gardens are down there on River Road. The man that owns the house there is on well water. They take the water out of the ditch next to our trailer park to water their gardens. We have 45, 50 ducks down there. We have a little lady that feeds them down there. We have deer down there. We have a 5-point down there. He's a big boy. He hangs around there, just loves the place. We have beavers down there. It's all natural down there. The court has been there over 50 years. It's not fair. My trailer's too old. There's 3 of them there that are too old. They cannot move anywhere in the city of Missoula or in any trailer court because they are too old. And there's a gentleman that just moved there this summer, hoping to God that he dies there or when he's ready, go into a retirement home. It cuts right down the middle of his house. He won't have a house. No. I'm 2 blocks away from Russell Street. Why should that impact me that greatly? That is not fair. That wasn't brought up. Oh, the house is on Russell Street and the business is on Russell Street. Yes. But nobody said nothing about the houses down 2 blocks away that are in the back of the trailer court that are going to be impacted from this plan. No. 3+, maybe. I've been there 20 years. I went to this school for 8 years. I lived up on 9th Street for 30 years. I'm a native Missoula Montanian that is going to be forced out of my home because of this project. You didn't think about that, did you? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your concern. This is one area, while it will provide some clarification from the EIS, none of those trailers are proposed to be relocated or impacted. There's an irrigation ditch to the west. The idea is to pipe that irrigation ditch and move that road further to the west and not impact those trailers. That's the proposal.
Great big huge trucks running right through there. Yes, it will impact everybody there.
Nobody's proposing to relocate those trailers with this proposed project. So just a clarification from the EIS, that's not the proposal. It's not the proposal to take those trailer homes. But thank you very much for your comment. Anybody else want to speak this evening? Okay, again, this is not your last opportunity, and I will provide the opportunity if you've already spoken this evening, if you have an additional comment and want to put that on the recorded record, please feel free to do that. The court reporter is still here. You have other opportunities to leave written comments. Go to the webpage. Ample opportunity until October 20th. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate your participation.
Hey, thanks for keeping your cool.
Next time would give something for everybody. Presented.
Well, glad you asked me to sit up here. Appreciate it.